Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Career Cloud podcast. Today's guest is Matt Doan. Matt is the founder and CEO of Transcendent Media. He's passionate about helping people live uncaged, which means taking control of your work situation to unlock your dream lifestyle. He does this as a coach, course instructor, and content creator. Before becoming an entrepreneur, he spent over 15 years consulting with executives at Global 2000 companies and national security agencies on their technology and cybersecurity strategies. His writing has appeared in Harvard Business Review, MIT Sloan Management Review, and The Atlantic. He's also the host of the Uncage Yourself podcast and a frequent speaker. Matt and I met on Twitter. We have a lot in common. We're trying to help the same type of people. We have zigzag career paths, and we have just a lot to talk about. I really enjoyed meeting Matt for the first time, and I look forward to following his journey as we continue. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Matt Doan. Matt, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Mike, it's going to be a fun time. Let's do this.
Yeah, so just for our audience, Matt and I kind of met a little bit on LinkedIn, where I've been meeting a lot of people recently, it's fantastic. For all you networkers out there, please figure out how to utilize LinkedIn to the best of your ability, because you never know where great things are going to happen. So Matt and I met on LinkedIn. He reached out, and we've just found out that we kind of have some similar backgrounds in terms of how we've built our careers, or broken down our careers maybe and rebuilt them back up. And so I'm super excited to talk to you today and get to know you a little bit. Just for our audience, can you just start maybe with a little bit of background? Maybe give us the 5-minute version of Matt Doan and where you started and what you're doing now.
Yeah, happy to. So I grew up in a very conservative household, very religious, very by the book. And you put your head down, you worked hard, and you picked a path. And that was key to life success. Get good grades, get into the good college, move on, pick a path. Very typical on what we're thought to do when you start early in school, and then you make your way through college, and then you graduate out of that into the workforce. And then you're like, okay, I'm on this path, got to be successful. So I rocketed out of college. I was this hybrid business/technology consultant. I had been in management consulting since the get-go out of college. So it was always client after client, traveling around the world, moving fast, lots of problems, lots of interesting challenges, lots of variety. And I thought, this is amazing. Could anything be better than all this variety and hotel points and status and all this stuff, right? It's like, this is awesome. At the same time, I got married very young and had 3 kids very young, all in my 20s. So by the time I was 28, I had 3 kids. And this created a different set of dynamics for me, where I was finding my self-worth, finding my identity in work. And everyone saw that as me, like, God, you're moving so fast, Matt. You're doing so many amazing things. You're getting published. You're getting all these awards and promotions. I was like, yes, this is where I'm meant to be. And I could come home and talk about my greatness at work. And, there was a very real importance there. And I don't say that with tongue in cheek. I really felt that. I felt it deeply, that was my purpose to my family. And professionally, I was meant to climb that ladder, to use that analogy, because it felt right. It didn't feel wrong. It felt right at the time. But being on the road for so long, I started really leaning into it too much. Before I knew it, I spent all those years on the road, living in work, always dialed in. At dinner time, I had my phone. I was checking email, and I would work after the kids go to bed. And next thing I knew, I lost my marriage. I kind of lost access to my kids for a while. My mental health went to crap, and I was broken. I had given so much to work, and not to say that work was the only cause, but that was the primary cause, where I had given so much to that world and neglected my home life. And as I approached the age of 30, I started realizing, oh my God, there's all these things that I need to be spending my time on, because that's what I'm meant to do on this earth. Be a good husband, be a good father, be a good friend, a mentor. And I went through this rebuilding phase, Mike, where I had to look at what I wanted to be in the next phase. And I needed to take some new things seriously. I needed to provide for my family. I had quite a few people that I was feeding, and I couldn't just leave the corporate world. I needed to be a big part of my life going forward, because it was lucrative. Consulting pays well, and it does well for you. But what I learned in the process, and this is through much therapy and working with coaches, is that I was caged. I was in what I call now the corporate cage, where I was saying yes to everything that was asked of me. And I was caging myself, just letting myself live in that box. And I was stuck. I couldn't move. And I needed to uncage myself. I needed to step out of that. And I had the keys to that. Only I did, where I could say no to things. I could work more on my own terms. So several years of reinventing myself at work was about new strategies to really protect my time, be very careful and selective about what I said yes to, think about what does work mean in context of an improved lifestyle. I thought about if I can design a lifestyle that I was proud of, and then I'd ask myself the next layer down, how does work fit into that? So worked through that for a while, was very successful at freeing up my time and energy and keeping work in a box, but really focusing my time and energy with family and self-care and side businesses and passion work on the side. So I evolved a lot from there, but I'll pause there to see if you have any reflections.
Yeah, so you kind of, it's interesting. You mentioned your upbringing first, or at least how you were raised. I'm assuming, my question is, where do you think your kind of work mentality came from? And I'm assuming I kind of know part of the answer, but can you drill in a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think I got that from my father. He was someone very introverted and put in long, hard hours, quietly, never complained. And I think I saw this role model from him that this is what it takes to provide. He never expressed this deeply to me and said, this is what you should do, Matt. But I just internalized it and started running on that path myself. He got multiple degrees. He had a long career in the Air Force and in civilian life, was successful in lots of different ways. And I just internalized that. But then also, I think I started feeling the pressures when I got into college, or when you get those first internships, or when you're in the workforce and you start seeing the competitive nature around you of people pushing for promotion, kind of elbowing around and saying what success is credentials, salary, and pay bumps and all these things. And you just feel this natural competitive aspect to keep up with them.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's where like broadly speaking now, so we talked a little bit about your background and where that mentality might come from, but broadly speaking, America's got this rap for work culture, right? And we just grind and get through it. Like, what, broadly speaking, what do you think is driving that? Is that just I guess, the history of success we've seen with our forefathers and people who have come before us, setting that stage, or what? Like, because it's very starkly different from Europe and other places.
Yeah. If you look at the history of work, particularly in the US, especially since the industrial era, what has been handed down for several generations, my friend Paul Millard talks about this in his book, The Pathless Path, is the idea where work for work's sake is often the thing that's rewarded. It's the hours mentality, it's the showing up and being there, the participation points. Secondarily is often the impact that you make, but you have this hours based mindset and showing up and always being there and always plugged in. And as a millennial, I got past that mindset down to me from my father and from those above me and those bosses I worked for over the years. That was handed down to me. What's interesting, kind of being in the millennial time frame, is you feel on one hand that pressure, but then you see what's coming behind you, like with Gen Z values. And I'm loving what I'm seeing from this next generation, especially that are in their 20s right now, where they're seriously valuing their time, their autonomy, their choice, their mental health. And they're really looking at, how do I maximize for that? And there's a lot of interesting trends since COVID where they're focusing on things that I've learned to focus on only through lots of trial and error and pain. So I see that kind of being caught between two generations is often where millennials are at this point.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. I'm an older millennial, I guess, technically as well, and yeah, I remember in my 20s just having this mentality that, like, I'm gonna I was a financial futures trader at the time. I'm just gonna grind, and I'm gonna, like,
Mm.
either make this a success, or I'm literally gonna die in my chair, like, of a heart attack or something like that. Like, that was in my head, like that was what was gonna happen. Um, and I thankfully I was kind of awoken from that. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a dangerous thing. And I think looking at Gen Z, I do agree with you. I think there's a lot of great kind of qualities there that, again, as you said, like, I learned to value these things. I learned that it's actually like okay to not work 60 hours a week, right? Like, if you're producing the outcomes that you're supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah.
There's kind of like diminishing returns, like to the hours or whatever. And then beyond that, it's just theater. It's, oh, I'm in the office, I'm here more than you, or, kind of those elbows, right? Like, so that's super interesting.
Yeah. It's like, in that sense, it's no longer about the work, it's performative work. You are there putting on theater for for the sake of extra hours, to up your perception in bosses' minds, to position better for promotions. And it's this game beyond the core outputs. And like you said,
Right.
if you focus on outcomes over hours and take that mentality of what's the essential that I must deliver, the outputs, the outcomes that I must focus on, and fixate there, and don't go past that point of diminishing returns. Know what that is. Don't go above it. Because when you do that, it's not worth those trade-offs. You're exerting extra time, energy, you're losing time with family, you're losing your mental health or physical health for extra effort that's really not worth it to you or to the organization, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think, like, that's why a lot of people end up being drawn to some form of entrepreneurship, and we live in this age where everybody can do that, or a lot more people can kind of create a entrepreneurial business than in past, is because, like, the outcomes are pretty clear when you work for yourself, and then you are working for yourself, so it's kind of your baby, and you got no one to blame, and you got no one to fight over for a promotion. It's yours. So there's like some ownership, some agency that shows up there, which is really interesting. We're probably getting ahead of ourselves in the conversation a little bit, but that's just where my head goes when you say that kind of stuff. So I want to rewind a little bit and talk about, because you described how you got a lot of help from coaches, from therapy, and you were still working in really this corporate environment and structure. What was, I think you hinted at it a little bit, what was kind of the tipping point that really made your eyes open to something needs to change?
I remember very viscerally, I was on the road in Munich, and one night we were about to go out for a very posh dinner, as you do with the clients. And ironically, we're going to wear our German attire, our lederhosen. We literally had gear for on the road to go have fancy dinners and parties. And I remember, like, laying it out in my hotel bed, and I saw it, and I realized I was missing my son's 5th birthday. And it broke my heart to, like, I am prioritizing wearing this silly gear and being out on the road and not being with them. And it just, what kind of life trade-off am I willing to make here? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. That was after I had already been separated and kind of didn't see them as much anymore. And it just hit me so hard. I remember, like, falling on the floor and just, like, being teared up for a couple hours is what it felt like. I went home, and those next few months is when I dove deeper into therapy, and I hired a new coach, started reading all sorts of self-development books, picked up journaling, just being like, what the hell am I doing with my life? And it wasn't like a clean overnight, here's my new life. It was like, no, I've got to try something. And it felt like a couple years of experimenting with, how do I get corporate under my control? How do I, now using this language, how do I uncage myself? How do I step out of that and do this more on my own terms? How do I think through, how do I deliver the right essential outputs at work for the least amount of effort? How do I, where everyone else is showing up 10 hours, show up 5 hours and be seen with just as much respect and notoriety and value as all of them that are giving twice as much effort? How do I make sure that I am doing things outside of work, whether it's being with family, eventually building a side business, doing self-development work, whatever it is. How do I make time for that? So it was a lot of experimentation. Sometimes I would tell people at work that I was experimenting in these ways. Like I would opt out of, there was a whole year where I opted out of daily stand-ups in the morning. Everyone else would spend 9 a.m. every single day with meetings and show up. And these weren't high value to me and they were interrupting my creative flow, and I opted out of them. Nothing bad happened. Maybe a few people hated on me, but I got so much freedom and time and energy back in my day as that small example. But I had to figure out, how do I want to design my work experience and then live up to that as much as I can? If I have this optimal work experience, how can I live up to it at least like 80%? And if I do, that's a damn good success. And that's getting so much life back.
So I want to dig into that a little bit, because that's a really like concrete example that I'm sure there's like a bunch of people listening that are like, yeah, I would love to opt out of a meeting set as well, but I'm scared to death. Like, how did that go? I mean, what did your did you have conversations with your superiors, or how did you work that out?
Yeah. For now, I admit I was a little bit senior at this point, right? This was several years ago when I started doing it. So it was like at the director level within the consulting realm. And I already had a lot going on. So I felt that spending my time wisely on my own terms was something. I'm an adult. I should be able to figure this stuff out. And if I can't make it, I won't overly justify why I can't be there. I'm not going to say, sorry. They should respect that I am doing my own thing and adding value to the organization. And I was like, my mind only works well from like 8 to 11 a.m. before the energy levels go down. So if I have stuff interrupting that constantly, I'm no good for the team. I'm not good for the clients. The deliverables aren't as good, all these things. And I was like, if I don't take ownership of this, who will? We're all going to fracture our days and hurt our outputs and hurt one another just because we're trying to have this participation point game go on. And it's like, no, right. I'm not going to do that. So some people, I told that I was not attending. And then eventually I got to my direct line leadership and I said very concretely, you might notice that I've not been there in several months. And it's for these reasons, because this is how I'm most effective at home and for work. And I need to be effective in both. I hope you can understand that. And they were very understanding. I didn't get harsh pushback. I had very good leadership over the years. But I think if you're very human with people and be like, listen, this arrangement, whether it's meetings or a set of tasks I'm signed up for, responsibilities that don't make sense, like I need to get out of this so I can be my healthiest self. And if I'm my healthiest self, I can be my best for this team, this organization. Is that a worthwhile arrangement to you? And I would like to think that most good leaders would say, yeah, I get that. Let's strive for that. Let's get as close to that as we can. Sometimes it won't be perfect. Sometimes we'll need you to jump on a call. Cool. But if we're at least striving for that and we're on the same page, we don't just all default to doing the same things, because that's just wasteful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, being just upfront and direct is the best path, pretty much no matter what, because you're going to get people who, good leaders, like you said, empathize with your situation, and then say, maybe even take a step further. Okay, well, how do we even do this for more people, right? Is the way we're doing this working for the majority of people? Because a lot of times people just don't say anything. And so that, that's one outcome. And then the other is hard no. And okay, you've got the information, it's out in the open, and you can make the next best decision that you need to make kind of in the chain. So that makes a lot of sense. So like, so your kind of first path, I guess, when you realized things weren't working well for your work life, it was to really get control of your time. That you kind of seemed like that was your number one, like, first step, right?
Yeah. Time and attention, to focus.
Time and attention. So to be there for family, but also for your focus and your work, like being able to do better work. What was kind of next in the evolution? I'm curious.
Yeah. What was next in the evolution was figuring out purpose and meaning. Okay. What I found over the years is that while initially the work generated some sense of purpose, it faded and I no longer felt it. And I tried to artificially say this work is meaningful, this feels, and it didn't connect in my soul. I might have outwardly said, hey, we're working for so and so client on this big project in the world, and it's going to have all these impacts on the world overall, and that's just started feeling false, and I needed something deeper. And I realized that it shouldn't be on my employer or my employer experience to give me purpose and meaning. I shouldn't make that a requirement. That's a really hard ask, to say like we need to find purpose and meaning in something external that's given to us as an opportunity. I'm like, I need to create this myself. I need to figure out this own purpose and meaning. So in pinching down the amount of time and energy I was giving to work, I started experimenting on the side. So I started a blog like 5 years ago. When COVID started, I started a podcast, a newsletter. A little bit further into COVID, I started testing an entrepreneurial bug that was inside of me. I needed to do something with it. So I started a coaching business while I was still a full-time consultant in a very demanding environment, because I felt if I could experiment there professionally to find purpose and meaning beyond being a good husband and father, if I could experiment that sort of path, maybe something would come of it. So after a couple of years doing this during the COVID times with coaching and doing the podcast, just content creation online, much like you do, I started to feel real. I started connecting with what my purpose was, and it felt as though I needed to help my past self. My past self was someone who was getting overrun by corporate. It was ruining their lives because they let it. And I figured out how to get out of that and make it work on my terms. And I'd like to go help others who are equally stuck now, that are several years behind me. They're sort of waking up. They were like, I want something more out of life. I don't need work overrunning every waking moment. Those are the people I'd like to help. So I know them very well. I was them. So I started a whole coaching business on that. I launched a cohort course the beginning of 2022. I left consulting now as a full-time entrepreneur because I believe so deeply in this purposeful mission and that so many people need this sort of support. I'm devoting myself to it now.
The word I use is alignment. Like I just, that's become like utterly clear to me in the last couple of, call it 3 years, is like, the things that I want to devote my time to, I can't think through necessarily. Like I have to feel it. It's got to be like, if I'm gonna, again, like our time is our most valuable resource, and I've really learned that big time in the last couple of years, just turning 40 and kind of going through that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I call it alignment. It's like if I don't feel it, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, coming to, the world of career and the site that we have and the podcast and newsletter and stuff, like, oh, that's all, I'm here because I want to be here. Much like you, like there are things that I'm reprocessing and trying to figure out, that could have been super beneficial to myself as I navigated, 6 different career changes, let's say. And I know there's people in that same seat. And so I'm feeling it, and it's aligned, and that's where like kind of that magic happens. Your creativity gets unlocked. I feel like, so that's a huge, huge part of it. Yeah, you have to have the time to be able to creatively experiment. I love that you use the word experiment, because when you're starting a side hustle, like we don't know what's going to work. Like we have no idea. The world is much more unpredictable than we think it is. And so we have to be able to allow ourselves time, the capital we need, and the emotional, mental space to say like, it's okay if number 1, 2, 3 doesn't work out, but we're going to keep working. So that's really important stuff. So as you were experimenting with Uncaged and coaching and thinking about your past self, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see with people in that same circumstance?
Let's go through a few. Number one is that they believe suffering is necessary. They have this inherent belief that the nature of the job, the profession that they're in. And it can be a wide range of fields, from trading to consulting to all sorts of things, marketing. And they grow up and they're conditioned to believe that suffering is necessary. This sucks. It's not fun. It's going to stomp on your life and intrude on your weekends. And these, like, we have these beliefs, these limiting beliefs that just creep up and we install as our default. Like, this is the way it is. Suffering is the reality. I need to escape on weekends and on vacations. I need to escape from work to feel good. And I do that periodically, a few times a year and every 5 days or so. And I think it's such a sad place now, looking back, having gone through this experience, that suffering is necessary. I like to think that instead of accepting suffering as a feature of your job, suffering is a bug, and you can overwrite this code with new code, which says I can make my work experience be to my liking, and I don't need to experience suffering. Yeah, some days it's going to suck. It's going to slap me upside the head. I'm going to not like certain colleagues. So what? That's part of it. But I don't need to accept this general state of suffering as how I'm living. That's point one. Point two, I'll go back to what you just said, Mike, alignment. When you are in a state of non-alignment, you feel it. And you feel it in one of your three brains: your head, your heart, or your gut. Those are three signals that are saying something's logically wrong. Your heart says it's wrong, or you viscerally feel it in your gut. Those are very important sensors inside of you. And when you're working, especially month after month, out of alignment, you just know you're meant to be doing a different set of activities in life, and you're doing an alternative set that feels like suffering. That life of alignment, we've got to get to a state of alignment. We've got to figure out what that better vision for every day looks like, so that we can slowly configure our daily experience, both at home and at work, to get closer to that aligned vision of what we want life to feel like. I would start there. And it really comes down to these limiting beliefs of people don't believe it's possible. And once you start to believe it's possible, then you can start making the right traction. You can make movement. You can surround yourself with people that have escaped the corporate cage, or have spun off and started their own business, or no longer say no to all the BS that everyone says yes to. Like, once you surround yourself with the right people and believe that a better life at work is possible, you can start taking tactical actions, but you've got to get out of your own way to start.
Yeah, the suffering aspect is, there's like this, sometimes it's not even just necessary. It's, I suffer, therefore I'm doing something important. There's almost like a martyrdom type of a thing
badge of
with it,
honor,
which is interesting. I still feel it sometimes. And that's a deconditioning thing that I'm, on a path to getting rid of. But yeah, and then the alignment piece is interesting as well. I think a big part of it in my mind is like, we just, as a culture, as a college to profession assembly line, we just don't do a very good job of helping people get aligned at an early stage. Because I think what happens is people pick a profession. They're like, well, shit, it's this. Here's my three options that I kind of like. Here's this. And now we're on the path. We're on a train. And when you're on the train, you almost need like some moment of permission to jump the train and to move and switch paths. And that's hard to do once now you've got kids and you've got a house and cars and a lifestyle. Now you've got the corporate handcuffs and so that's very difficult. I don't know how we necessarily do that and get people more aligned at an early stage, but that part seems to be like a big problem, worth solving.
One of the shortcuts I help people with when they're really stuck and they feel like they need a better work situation to improve their life is I say, okay, you're surrounding yourself with, say, 10 people right now. Push those 10 people aside, as far as don't spend a lot of time and energy with them right now. Minimize that, whether it's friends, family, or coworkers. Go find a mentor spectrum. A mentor spectrum would be, okay, a few people that are in your similar situation. You're struggling together. You all want something better You don't know what that is quite, but that's a few people. Then you find people a few steps ahead. Maybe they've taken control of their 9 to 5 and it's a lot smoother for them now. Or maybe they built a side hustle and escaped and actually have their own purposeful business at this point. And then at the very top end of that spectrum, find some heroes, those people that are all over social, who write the books, on podcasts, that are living a life that you go, oh my God, I want some of that. That's the life I want. And if you start surrounding yourself with that spectrum of people, you can empathize with certain ones, you can learn from others, and you can be inspired by people at that North Star, by your heroes. And like, those are the people that'll unlock your thinking and start to get you believing in a better way of working and living.
Makes a lot of sense. I also love the idea of, you said something about this before, but not quite in these words, having somebody kind of a few steps behind you too, because that's a little confidence builder. You know, you can look back, maybe you don't come in contact with them necessarily, or seek advice from them, or even seek to actively help them, but to keep tabs on them is interesting, because it's like, oh, I was there. You know, I'm not starting from ground zero. I was there and I'm here now, and I've got these people that can help me go that way. So that's a little trick that I've kind of implemented to, because I have a tendency to be really hard on myself. and so that was just, it's a little bit of a trick. Be like, okay, yeah, other people are in that position. I've changed, right? A lot of times we think people can't change, but I've changed because I've got like a little step further than that. So that's a little hack. So who's kind of, or who or what has maybe influenced you the most to become the coach and go down the path that you are now? I know you talked a little bit about helping your former self, but has there been anybody in particular that's influenced you to go this coaching route?
The idea for the better me, I ground in an old ancient philosophy, which is Stoicism. Stoicism, I was introduced to by many people these days, is by Ryan Holiday. Puts out a book every single year. Yeah. So I started I read it every day. I study it. I record podcasts about it. I teach people about it. So I'm embedding it in my subconscious on what it's like to be stoic, which is like, things don't control how I feel. I control my experience in the world. No one else can make me feel a certain way. I control how I feel every single day. I'm in charge of my choices and actions. And the more self-reliance, almost going back to like Emerson, the more self-reliance you have in your life, the more autonomy and boldness you have on taking better action. So I started learning Stoicism over the years and practicing it. So I found certain coaches out there, people that have really amazing businesses, whether they're coaching CEOs or they're like life coaches, like those people that are working one-on-one with people and changing lives, whether it's professional, personal, or both. It's been amazing to just see what they do for people. And I found myself connecting to that idea of one-on-one transformational coaching, just going deep, helping people blast past all of their limiting beliefs and see what's under the surface and explore what they're really capable of. Going through that experience with someone over 1, 3, or 6 months. I mean, that's just an unbelievable feeling to be able to dig in with people over that time. And then, I have this scale idea inside of me where I want to do this for a lot of people. I don't know why. I really want to. So there's this balance of, I like doing it one-on-one because I that's gratifying to me to see someone's life change, and it's thorough, right? In that sense. But then I'm asking myself, how can I scale that? What are the multipliers I can put in the world, the assets that will just help others do this? So that's kind of the journey I'm on now, is how do I take these Stoic principles, infuse them into my coaching, and then do a little bit of scale so that more people, especially in this very difficult time, during kind of post-COVID here, like, how do they take control of the work life versus letting work control them?
Makes a lot of sense. So you're leading into Uncaged and your course and stuff like that. Can you tell us a little bit about the course, how it's set up, what type of people are, can benefit from it, all that kind of good stuff?
Totally. So for those that haven't seen this kind of revolution in education technology, so we grew up knowing one-way college lectures, which were kind of boring, right? Or these on-demand type courses that exist. You pay $100, you get a series of videos and worksheets. that sort of follow through in the transformation from getting the student from A to B is very low in both of those scenarios. What we need to actually transform, and whatever the problem set is, whatever we want to transform to, learn a skill, improve our mindset, change our job situation, we need community and accountability. Those are the two factors that drive human transformation. There's a lot of psychological research that goes into this. So over COVID, there was this rise in the education technology world, the ed tech space, for cohort-based courses. One of the leaders was funded by Andreessen Horowitz. It's called Maven. There's several other offshoots, similar programs out in the world today. But you see this rise of helping people in small groups, small cohorts, transform in some particular way. So for example, the cohort that I run, it's called Uncaged Academy, going with the theme of what we've been talking about. It's a 4-week sprint, and I target it for mid-career professionals, people that are like 10 plus years into the career. They've been quite successful. Then they start to feel like work is constraining them. They want something more out of life. So they want to put the 9 to 5 under control. They want to make sure that's to their liking, but they also want to unlock a lifestyle that excites them. And sometimes that involves creating like a side business. But I want to help create that experience for people. I don't want them to have to leave the 9 to 5 because that's not practical for most people. I want them to get control of it and then create a lifestyle, articulate it, and create movement towards it. So I run a cohort-based course. It's 4 weeks. It's a small group, usually between 15 and 20 people. You make friends, you uplift each other, you push each other, you give and take. There's a lot of camaraderie in it. We go through exercises, we go through breakout discussions. It's fast paced. It's not me one-way lecturing. It's me facilitating, giving ideas, and letting the group grow as a community. So I'm really excited on what this has been so far.
That's awesome. How many students, or you can be broad-based, how many people have kind of gone through your coaching and cohorts maybe combined?
Combined, about 35 is what I've done. And I've only been out fully out of the corporate world for 5 months at this point. So I expect that to go up a lot. But yeah, I've really enjoyed, for anyone starting a new product or service on the side, I think the one-on-one intimacy of that is very valuable as a starting point, because you want to get inside of the minds and hearts of those you seek to serve. You probably experience this yourself and going your own route, but figuring out what you want, you can't just assume it, but you have to spend time with them very intimately, lots of conversations to really get inside their heads and see what they need help with. And you experiment and you run courses, or you have lots of one-on-one Zooms, or whatever it needs to be. It's just how you learn what they need and you adapt to what you hear.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that's how you started one-on-one coaching, and then kind of moving into the cohort as you zeroed in on the bigger problems.
Exactly it.
Excellent. So what are you doing over on your podcast then too? You got Uncage Yourself .fm. What type of conversations are you having over there?
Yeah, it's a combination of solo episodes and guests like this, where we just dive deep into specific problems. For example, one topic I talk about is creating time freedom at work, which is like all the strategies and tactics you might implement to gain back time safely to still succeed at work, but do so while regaining time and energy. Sometimes we would dive into how would you create a side hustle while also delivering well at your job? Like, how would you explore that in a very methodical way so that you're not taking too much away from work, but you feel like you can do that safely and productively, right? Or how would you create, people don't like this term always, but how would you create a personal brand that opens up doors and magnetizes new opportunities over time, right? How would you get outside the 4 corporate walls and actually ship content to the world that tests you, challenges you, grows your new muscles, but also attracts opportunities and relationships to you that you wouldn't have otherwise?
To anybody listening who find themselves in your situation back a while, or my situation back a while, what's the number one thing you would want to say to them?
The life you dream of is entirely possible. Start there. It's not a incrementally better life. The life that you see others living that you love and it just are dreaming over, that is entirely possible for you, professionally and personally. And it's there's so much to learn. There's so many resources and inspiring people. It's the click of a button. And if you are smart, efficient, if you are focused on the life you want and you're willing to experiment and take a few hits and get back up and experiment again, you're going to edge your way towards it. And you are soon going to be having the professional and personal life that you're really excited about. But you have to keep going because it's painful for a long time to create that, but it's entirely worth it.
I love that. I love it. It is out there. It's scary. Like, when you hear that, it's sometimes scary because that means, well, shit, I got some work to do and it's on me. But it's there. So I love that. Resonate very, very much with it. So where can our audience learn more about you and your course and everything that you are doing?
Yeah, sure. They can just go to matthewdoan.com. That's my growing hub of everything. I try to keep it all centralized. So, and I think we'll have a few things in the show notes specifics, but yeah, try to keep it all there and just provide value to people, right? Like help them see that the better life, but the better work situation is entirely possible. Give them some resources, some support, some inspiration. That's what we do.
Awesome. And as I started the show, I said, Matt and I connected on LinkedIn. So go give him a follow. On LinkedIn, he's Matthew Doan, Doan. And on Twitter, Matthew R. Doan. We'll have all those links in the show notes. We'll have links out to his podcast, to his website, to the course. And I highly, highly recommend people start following Matt. He's doing a lot of great work. And we're kindred spirits. I'm really excited to continue following your journey and support you in the process.
Yeah, we're more powerful together. So I'm glad we're doing this, Mike.
All right. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Mike.